Consequently, he came to his room upstairs in the foulest possible mood. Slanting moonbeams fell across the room, and the fragrance of linden trees and flowers wafted through the open windows. Mitya walked up to the window and looked down. The entire garden seemed to be slumbering, with nary a leaf stirring. Only the fireflies glimmered here and there in the grass that looked completely black. Mitya listened to the night-time silence, and peering at the moonlit garden, thought of something vague, unclear even to himself, something that brought on a kind of strange longing, or maybe joy, which he hadn't taken time to ponder yet, and which passed almost before he'd noticed it. Suddenly something rustled under the window, and he heard quiet voices. Directly under him, on a small bench in the shadow of lilac bushes, sat Peter and Dashenka, Lubotshka's friend. Her pale dress stood out in the moonlight, and her little blonde head almost looked silver. Her hand rested in Peter's hand, and he was saying something to her, leaning very close to her face, as if whispering into her ear, as she laughed quietly, shaking her pretty head. Peter leaned even closer to her, so close his face touched hers, and the sound of a kiss momentarily merged with the chirring of crickets singing somewhere in the grass. Mitya quickly staggered away from the window, overcome with something between indignation and curiosity. He was disgusted and angry at Peter, who had stooped to such level of idiocy where he would kiss a girl. At the same time, he wanted to hear what they might say and wait whether they might kiss again. He peeked out the window again, but Dashenka had run away, probably frightened by the kiss. Peter went after her, and a moment later their ringing, laughing voices broke the solemn silence of the night, echoing loudly on the terrace, along with the voices of Lubotshka and Mironov. Mitya stood by the window a bit longer, as if waiting to see whether they would come back, then became mad at himself for being interested in such nonsense, and at Peter and Mironov for bothering with these foolish girls, and at the girls themselves, who would ruin such fine men as Peter and Mironov once were. Calling them fools in his mind, Mitya angrily slammed the window shut and decided to never talk with any of them again. He had been asleep for almost an hour when he heard the door of his room creak quietly and open. Lazily, sleepily, Mitya thought Peter and Mironov must have been back. Having no wish to speak to them, he firmly pulled the blanket over his head and turned to the wall. But it turned out it wasn't them, since Mitya did not hear either their footsteps or their voices. He only sensed a slight rustling, as if from the silk curtain by his window. Then Mitya opened his eyes again and raised his head with some anxiety. But there was no one in the room, and only the fluttering shadows glided silently across the floor, and the croaking of the excited frogs sounded even louder through the open window.